In one of the most coveted awards in the world, the Times Now ICICI Bank NRI of the Year Awards, powered by Global Indian International School, in its 4th season, salutes the spirit of non-resident Indians from the regions of Middle East, North America, Asia Pacific and United Kingdom. This week, we discover the stories of individuals who have achieved professional success in their careers through their hard work and determination, and have been recognized as the Professional of the Year from their respective regions.
Welcome to the Times Now ICICI Bank NRI of the Year Awards 2017, powered by the Global Indian International School. And I'm in conversation with the winner of the NRI Award for Professional Excellence in the Asia Pacific region, Research Director of the Institute of Molecular and Cell Biology in Singapore, Mr. Bhairappa Venkatesh. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here.
So you're considered to be a pioneer in the field of genomics, having set up the first genomics lab at the Institute of Molecular and Cell Biology in Singapore. However, you grew up in middle-class India, where genomics must have been in its infancy at the time.
I was always interested in science. My father was a veterinary doctor, and my sister was a medical doctor, and I was always interested in science. So I decided to go to Singapore first to do my PhD in physiology. After that, I went to Cambridge in England to do a postdoctoral fellowship under Nobel laureate Sidney Brenner. He is the one who stimulated my interest in genomics. Genomics was just at the beginning at that stage, and people were only talking about mapping the human genome. Even sequencing was nowhere in sight. So we knew at that time sequencing and understand the human genome is going to be the greatest challenge, and it's very important for us to understand the basis of all human diseases and to find effective therapies.
And sir, how much progress have we made when it comes to demystifying the human genome in your view?
Human genome was sequenced completely about 20 years ago, but still we are far from understanding the human genome completely. The reason is, see, our human genome is very large. It contains about 3,000 million bases of DNA characters. Out of that, only about 1 to 2% comprises of proteins, genes that make proteins. The rest all do not code for any protein. And we understand very little about this non-coding region of the genome. These regions are important because they regulate the gene. They turn on the gene at the right time in the right cell. And if this regulation is affected, it can cause diseases. So understanding this non-coding region of the genome is still a challenge, and many of us, including our group, is working on understanding this part of the human genome.
The outbreak of infectious diseases in India is considered to be a leading medical problem, closely followed by genetic disease, of course. What role does your work play in alleviating these issues?
We are right now focusing on rare genetic diseases. These are diseases where parents are perfectly healthy and normal, but suddenly a child is born with some deformities, limb deformities, mental retardation, loss of hearing, and such multiple symptoms. And because of these multiple symptoms, clinicians are at a loss to diagnose this disease properly. So what we do is we sequence the DNA of the affected child and DNA of their healthy parents and compare the DNA and try to pinpoint where the mutation has occurred in the child's genome. This helps us to understand how the disease is caused, and it helps the clinicians to come out with a better therapeutic strategy so that they can cure these diseases. In some cases, it's not possible to cure the disease, but they can advise the parents, if they have another child, what are the chances of that child having the same disease. So it helps to better manage the disease in many instances.
So you've also served as a professor in the pediatrics department at the University of Singapore. How do you simultaneously balance your contribution to the world of academia and research?
Academia and research actually go hand in hand, because we always keep learning new things, and teaching that to students helps us to keep abreast of the field. And also doing research helps us because we get our students involved in the latest research we are doing. That helps to expose them to the latest techniques, latest findings. So they're always at the cutting edge of research. So this is actually a good combination where academia and teaching goes together hand in hand.
Well, tell us more about how long it typically takes for such cutting edge research to reach the commercialization phase.
It takes quite a long, especially in biomedical sciences, because we are talking about human beings. We are not talking about flies or worms or mice. So, like for example, my disease, sometimes we help to find out which gene is affected. Then the pharmaceutical companies will try to figure out what chemicals can be developed that can either activate this gene to have a healthy baby or to suppress a non-favorable gene so that the disease is prevented. And this goes on at several stages. So first it's done in cell lines, then it is tried in mice, and then it goes to clinical trials. So it's a long process. But in the end, even if one successful drug comes out, we consider it as a big success.
And what role can NRIs such as yourself play when it comes to fostering and furthering biomedical research on Indian shores?
I'm a visiting scientist at the Center for Human Genetics in Bangalore, and I visit there every year, give lectures to the students as well as staff members. I give seminars and have detailed discussion with the faculty members there. So this helps them to keep up with the research that we are doing. And recently they have started a master's course in human genetics, which is one of its kind. And these students will have a very bright future because there are so many genetic diseases. And also knowing genetic information is like a cutting edge sword, two-edged sword, because it can be used for good purpose as well as it can be used to harm somebody. So we need genetic counselors who can tell the parents what's the impact of finding a mutation in their child, how it can be handled, what's the consequence of that, what are the chances of that child getting a particular disease. So this area is lacking not only in India, in many countries. So I look forward to having many courses like this where the students will be trained in genetic counseling, and though they can advise the patients better so that they can manage the data more in an informed way.
So thank you so much for your time, and we wish you continued success.
You're welcome.
We're in conversation with the winner of the NRI Award for Professional Excellence in the Middle East, Chief Chemist of Kuwait Oil Company, Kuppusamy Uttapun. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Sir, you grew up in a poor village on the outskirts of Coimbatore.
Exactly.
And you're the first Indian national to be appointed to the position of Chief Chemist for Kuwait Oil Company. What have been some of the most major turning points in your career?
Major turning points, I would say, first of all, getting an opportunity in the Kuwait Oil Company. Before that, I was in Saudi Aramco, which is Saudi Arabian American Oil Company. It's called like that now. Previously, it was just Aramco, Arabian American Oil Company. There, I got a chance in early 70s or mid 70s, I would say, and it was a rare opportunity in those days to get a job in Aramco. So seeing an NRI employed in an oil major like Aramco, which produces 10.5 million barrels per day now, is getting a job there is a challenge. So I got achieved there. Then I showed my excellence there. Then I got very good incentives, excellence awards, certificates and everything. That made me to get a job in Kuwait Oil Company. Kuwait Oil Company, as I would say, is a major friendly company because there is no discrimination of jobs. Like in Aramco, the pay structure is different. Aramco Americans are paid a little bit higher because it was based on the standard of living. Whereas in Kuwait, all the grades are equal salary, equally salaried, I would say. So that is how it goes. So that attracted me. The challenges I faced there is, the locals. There are a lot of qualified locals. They get education in London, States, they are equally qualified. So bypassing them and getting a top post like chief chemist is a task. I was the first chief chemist, then followed some more people, but I was the first one. I established all the, the quality control programs in the early stages, also the restructuring of laboratories, the chemicals required for the oil quality you mentioned.
Well, sir, what's it like to shoulder the responsibility of producing millions of barrels of crude oil per day?
Yeah, the responsibility is like, this export crude which we are exporting, now currently it is 2.4 million, 3 million is the target. It was there before, now we are, as per the quota, we are around 2.4 million, Kuwait Oil Company. And producing that with the tight quality specification is difficult. For that we need a lot of chemicals, we have to select the right chemical, we have to buy the right chemical, test it and get the required quality of the crude. And we have the labs, 11 laboratories all around Kuwait, and monitoring the crude quality. Whatever quality crude we are exporting, it has to meet the specification.
So you've been credited with adopting an environmentally friendly approach to the production of crude oil. How is this accomplished?
The environment friendly, when we say this is, the removing the contaminants like H2S, which is hydrogen sulfide, and there is also the water, which is very saline, and it will corrode the pipelines and it will damage the pipelines. So we need to select the right approach, how to treat the crude environmental friendly. Don't bring very hazardous chemical. We have to select green chemicals, we call it, which has minimum impact on the environment as well as humans. And another one, also the handling, we need to develop certain procedures, operating procedures. The humans, how to handle the hazardous components like, the chemicals or even the crude when it has a lot of hydrogen sulfide, how to handle it, how to move the equipment safely, how to lift the chemical drums, all these things. Otherwise, they will be damaging themselves. So I have been given twice the top awards in Kuwait Oil Company, which is called CEO HSSC Award, Health, Safety, Security, Environment Awards. Last May, I got Global Energy Award, which is an environmental award. This certificate is signed by our Minister Maneka Gandhi. She is the chairwoman of that Global Energy Forum. So that's another credit added to me, because I developed a procedure, environmental procedure, which is very well could be shared with other international oil companies.
Sir, how can India have a more influential voice in the global conversation around oil?
Yeah, NRIs like me already are giving a good impact, abroad. Like I am an OCI, but still, I am considered as an Indian, and I am always attached to India. We are closer to India, just 2 hours or 3 hours flight. And whatever I say there, it is considered as an Indian voice. It's not considered as a Kuwait voice or anything. So all these steps, whatever we are doing, and there are a lot of employees with me, Indians. I interview them, and many more operators, laboratory technicians, they are working in Kuwait Oil Company with Indian companies, of course, as contractors. We select them, and they follow my instructions. So already Indian voice is heard everywhere,
Sir, who have been some of the biggest personal and professional influencers in your life?
Yeah, the professional influence, I would say my elder brother, KJ Rajulu, who is now in States. He was always first in the school as well as in the college. He was my role model. And of course, my father, who is not that much educated, he always wanted his sons, to be on the top and to be considered respectable in the society. So he always gave importance to education. He was not literate, as I would say. So we are 5 brothers and 2 sisters. So he always advised us to be on the top, and we fulfilled his dream. Actually, he is not anymore, but he was the motivation behind this. And of course, after marriage, my wife, who is here, my son Arun Uttaman, and my daughter, who is a doctor now, doing MD in India now, Silpasari Uttaman.
So thank you so much for your time and for your insights.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime.
It's time for a short break, but up next, the Times Now ICICI Bank NRI of the Year Awards 2017, powered by the Global Indian International School, continues. Don't go anywhere. Welcome to the Times Now ICICI Bank NRI of the Year Awards 2017, powered by the Global Indian International School. And I'm in conversation with the award winner for NRI of the Year in the Professional Excellence category, Director and Distinguished Writer Professor at Florida International University, Sitaraman Iyengar. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So you grew up in a small village alongside the outskirts of the Kaveri River. And today you're considered to be a global expert in the field of computing and robotics. Tell us about some of the most major milestones along this journey.
I came from a small village in India, in the Karnataka state called Hemige, and soon after I was born there, I was moved to Bangalore, and so from there I started actually thinking about how we can enhance the technology. Now, if you ask me that question, how did that happen at the age of 6 years, I don't think I can answer that question, but I think I can certainly say that later on, I had that sort of an initiative for a simple reason. We came from fairly a very humble family. So there was a necessity for me to come up with something very unique that can translate into technology and sort of, into finally some achievement that I can do that. So after the high school, which I got fairly a rank and an upper first class, I joined National High College, which is one of the most prestigious college. Then there was a professor by name Professor H. Narasimhaya, who had just come from Ohio State University, and he was the principal of the college. So every weekend he used to give sort of lectures, how is that it is going to be in America, what opportunities that you have. So this I am talking in 1963. And at the same time, perhaps you know that Sir C.V. Raman, a Nobel laureate in physics, who visited National College and gave a talk, that inspired me, and then that sort of projected me into a real trajectory for my, things that what I have accomplished today. The next step that happened was, I joined the engineering college, and I was very fortunate, and I was very good in mathematics. So right at the final year of my engineering, I decided I should want to go to United States. So I was already looking for various universities, because I thought for some time, after listening to a lot of distinguished scientists and researchers who came back and said, at least you should go back and sort of do something and come back and see what you can give it back to India. So that sort of became an impetus for me to go to United States. So after finishing my undergraduate program in mechanical engineering, I joined Indian Institute of Science, and I did very well. And I think there was a very wonderful professor by name and director, Satish Dhawan, director of the Indian Institute of Science, who also started all of this ISRO work in the early years in India. When I met him, and he said, Iyengar, I think you should go abroad and see what you can learn technology-wise and come back and see what you can do. So that has been my starting point, and I owe a lot to Professor Satish Dhawan, who was instrumental in my going to abroad.
Sir, you've published over 500 research papers and over 12 books. What are some of the ground realities when it comes to the implementation of academic research?
So the very interesting thing is, there are what we call as a theoretical analysis. We had to develop a physics of how things work. In many of the applications, what we have done with the robots and in sensor networks, and for designing drones for many applications. So the physics of it is very important. So once we know the physics, then we need to be able to put a computational model on the physics, and then that can be used for writing and developing large-scale software, which then can be implemented. So to be very honest with you, we were being very fortunate to develop the most famous algorithm called Brooks-Iyengar algorithm. Richard Brooks was my student. We developed a fusion algorithm where we take all the information from different sensors, and we were able to fuse like human being and provide an inference and recognizing an object. And that is the basic reality. And now today, that algorithm is being used in our Unix operating systems for isolating faults, in many of the Raytheon applications, and there are 23 theses have been developed based on what we have done. So it is very critical nowadays to translate your basic idea and the concepts into reality in the concept of developing tools and the techniques and the corresponding software as well as the circuit design for implementation of these techniques.
You're credited with chairing several global cross-university research efforts. How do you originally identify and evaluate such opportunities?
You know, it's very important nowadays. We cannot be working in isolation in an ivory tower, because what is important, even I realized at the early 90s, an interdisciplinary approach. That means the computer science fits in all the disciplines. Even in medicines, I've been able to detect patents for detecting glaucoma. That's one good example how we were able to sort of interact with a computer scientist and then an ophthalmologist. And then we've been able to look at how, for example, detection of cancers, developing large-scale circuits, jointly working with medical doctors in many hospitals. So the most interesting thing for the next decade is to see how well we are able to integrate our ideas and work with all the others in the context of developing an application which will be very useful for mankind. One other application we have done, since I live in Florida, hurricanes are very common. So we were able to work with School of Wetland Resources, then School of Agriculture and National Hurricane Center, and developed a model that can predict how exactly and where the hurricane can hit. So here is a classic example of how our ideas can be translated into real-time applications, which will be very useful not only to a community, for a global community as a whole also.
So beyond your work at Florida International University, you're also a visiting professor at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. What are some of the biggest similarities and perhaps stark differences that you've witnessed in these two academic environments?
Good question. I was offered a very distinguished and a very privileged professor called Satish Dhawan, chaired professor at Indian Institute of Science. Very few people have that professorship, and I was very privileged. So when I accepted it, because I knew Indian Institute of Science is the most prestigious school, many brilliant students, I see that in fact, in United States, I think in my opinion, we have been able to do a lot of good things from people coming from India who have been able to show exceptional talents, because the Indian brains are the most important brains in my opinion, and other people from other nationalities too. So Satish Dhawan, chaired professor, when I took this professor and there for a couple of years, I found out how the best students are. Even for example, many of the universities in the United States, very hard to get students like that. So India is blessed with this kind of analytical thinking, which is very rare to find in many of the Western countries too. And then after that, I also became a Homi Bhabha professor at Indira Gandhi Atomic and National Research Center. And there I found these researchers are outstanding with lots of ideas, and that's why they've been able to successfully develop and implement hybrid reactors, so breeding reactors. So India, in my opinion, I was very fortunate to be born and have my early training so that I can contribute to the United States. Now I'm also sort of contributing back in India. As a matter of fact, one good instance I can tell you is we have developed a talent search program jointly between the National College and then Indian Institute of Science and of course NIAS, National Institute of Advanced Study, under Dr. Baldev Raj, where we are able to identify the talents of our high school students. Because that's what I feel very happy about it, because down the road there was some feeling I have, we may be able to look for another Ramanujam among these group of people. So in search of Ramanujam is the basic theme of this talent search program. And as a matter of fact, that Dr. Kiran Kumar is an ISRO chairman who is actively participating in this program of talent search, which I think is something to my heart, so that I can always feel there are a lot more Newtons, Einsteins, C.N.R. Raos we can come up with these students, identifying talents.
And so what other measures can India put in place to create more computer scientists of international repute?
India, what I would say is we are outstanding in every direction, but I would like to see, for example, more graduate students are sort of hired and sort of promoted, and then they were given training to do more PhD programs, because many of the second tier institutions, they do not have much of those same talents as we see in IITs and Indian Institute of Science. So by producing more number of graduates, and I think we can really develop the reputation exponentially, not just in India, I'm talking all around the globe. And I certainly feel down the road, you know, United States is already strongly dependent on Indian talents and, you know, Chinese talents too. But I think we can certainly increase more, which is good for India and good for the whole country.
Sir, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your insights.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to say a few words. Thank you.
Well, that brings the Times Now ICICI Bank NRI of the Year Awards, powered by the Global Indian International School, to a close. We'll see you next time.